present our next award this evening, which is the Sargent Shriver Award, I'm going to invite to the stage David Lopez, the chair of the board of directors of Los Sudes.
Blessings to you and your families, and a heartfelt thanks for your generous contributions to Brooklyn A, both in precious time and currency. Whether forming coalitions to combat family and community violence, or providing trainings to this effect, for the Major League Baseball and National Football Associations, to spearheading coalitions to combat discrimination in housing, Juan Ramos has embodied traits vital to any and all social justice organizations. And that is a genuine commitment, dedication, and respect for the legal, civil, and human rights of others. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, it is my honor to introduce the recipient of this year's Brooklyn Legal Services Corp. A Sargent Shriver Award for Community Service, Los Sudes' very own Juan Ramos.
Juan Ramos has been a tireless advocate and community leader, serving the Williamsburg, Bushwick, Bedford-Stuyvesant communities for the past 17 years. Mr. Ramos has shown incredible devotion and leadership in a variety of roles. As chair of the Broadway Triangle Community Coalition, and more recently, as the executive director of Southside United HDFC, Los Sudes. He has been a leader in community efforts to rid our streets of guns, steer the lives of troubled youth, and an advocate on behalf of domestic violence survivors as director of Safe Horizons Batterer Education Program. A passionate anti-sexism activist, he has worked with men and boys to create a society that is less violent for people of all genders and orientations. Juan has forged deep relationships with community members, citywide partners, and government officials, helping to improve the success of the programs he serves. We are hard-pressed to think of a person who more totally fulfills the spirit of Brooklyn A's Sargent Shriver Award, Juan Ramos.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I also want to thank David. If many of you know him, that's the shortest thing he's ever said, right? Actually, that was good for me, actually. I'm deeply humbled to be standing here before you tonight as the recipient of the Shriver Award, and deeply honored that I'm being honored by an organization that I truly value in our community, an organization that I truly respect. The work that Brooklyn Legal Services does on a daily basis on behalf of the people of our community is second to none. From the moment that you walk through their doors, they give you a neighborly hello and proceed to educate you on what your rights are and let you know that you'll never walk alone again. So thank you to Brooklyn A. A few days ago, I started writing a speech for tonight, and I decided to scrap it earlier today because if many of you know me, you know that when I'm scripted, I'm not real. And I love to be real because what I do with a passion. I do it because I truly am those people that I seek to help. And receiving this award from Brooklyn A, the people who help those most at the margins, to me is an honor, because the work that I do on a daily basis, I do because I have lived on the margins of the margins of the margins as a young man of color here in New York City. I have lived on those margins for many reasons. Many of you have heard some of the things that I work for. But none of you really truly know that I do that work simply because I was one of those people. The son of a survivor of domestic violence who witnessed his mother brutalized by his stepfather, I sat on that margin. A young man of color who truly didn't know his value in this city and lived in the city in an angry way and used that anger to basically begin to destroy my own community until others told me to do something positive in my community with the anger that I carried. I sat on that margin. When I defend families and I defend children, I sat on that margin because I was that child who witnessed the violence in his life, as again an indirect survivor of domestic violence, and also as a childhood survivor of sexual assault. I stand before you today as someone who now works with those on the margins because I understand their plight all too well. But I also stand before you today as someone who works to break the barriers of those margins simply because I know that if it wasn't for people investing in me, I would never have gotten an opportunity to be standing before you today. So the work that I do truly embodies me. I don't embody the work completely. It makes me who I am, it drives me to do what I do, and it makes me wake up every day wanting to do it even more. And I love my community in deeper ways than many can even imagine, because in many ways my community saved me. And I want to go forward also by just thanking a few people that are here for me tonight. People who mentor me and continue to mentor me, people that believe in me, people that always have my back, even when I'm right, even when I'm wrong, people who have my back when I think about all these crazy ideas of how to get people to listen to us. So I want to thank one of my mentors that's here tonight who has fought with me on the front lines of ending gun violence and gang violence here in New York City. I want to thank Ms. Ife Charles, who's here tonight. The work that I do to end sexual assault, domestic violence, and violence against women in this city and around the country, I could not do if I didn't have the mentorship and the support of two special men that came into my life at a very opportune time, a time where I needed mentorship, where I needed guidance. And those two men are Ted Bunch, who took me on as his mentee at the tender age of 21 when I entered his organization through an internship in AmeriCorps. And from that day started asking me, who are you going to be in relationship to the women in your life, the women in your community? If you're not going to be their partner, then find a way to use your platform to speak out for them, speak out with them, but most of all, share with other men so that we can all begin the process of undoing the harm that we've done to the women in our communities, in our families, and in our society. And his partner, who's here tonight, who flew all the way from North Carolina to be here with me, and I appreciate him. He's a mentor, a known activist around ending violence against women and girls in this country, Tony Porter. I want to thank you. Those of you that also know me know that I am my story, and the reason that I am my story is because I use my story to inspire others to try to change things that they may not feel they can overcome. And my story begins with people that invested in me, and that begins with my grandparents who sacrificed their lives and their time after they already had basically raised their children to take me in as their son and give me everything that they could as, driven grandparents and parents simultaneously for me. People who se presente for me when things were happening in my life that most didn't understand, and most kids my age should never understand. So I thank my grandparents for that. Factory workers who instilled in me a sense of getting up every morning at 5 o'clock. So I understand that worker who gets up every day at 5 o'clock. I understand that family that I fight for because they can't afford their rent because they're still factory workers. I understand that family who is out there looking for ways to support their family. I do this work on their backs and to honor them. And I also want to thank two very important, some important men in my life, in this community in particular, who came into my life at a time where I had just lost two of my biggest mentors. Before I mention those two men, I want to thank these other men that came into my life. I want to thank, first of all, David Lopez, who is someone who has my back no matter what. I want to thank my resident home historian and good friend, Ray Narvaez, who's here tonight. And I want to thank a man who, basically, when I came into this community and came in with some radical ideas and came in with some things, who said to me, calm down and have a seat, let's have a conversation. Think about what you're gonna do. And every day since then has really mentored me in every way possible. So I want to thank Gino Maldonado, who's here tonight. My story begins, though, again, as I said, as a person who sits on the margins of the margins, but also as a person who used the anger that he built up in those margins to really begin a destructive pattern in his life that would be seen as a pattern that would destroy his community. You see, because what you see today is a byproduct of love, a byproduct of community staying presente, community not giving up or throwing away a young man. And that all began when a few blocks from here on Skull Street and Leonard, I was the leader of one of the largest gangs in New York City. And two men showed up on that block one day to say to me, we believe you have the ability to organize young men in a particular way, but you're using that talent to throw away the good things that you can do with that. I want to bring into this room my mentor who's passed on, who this week was recognized by the city council by having the block on where the school where he teaches as a school teacher for decades, Monroe High School in the Bronx, the street was dedicated after him. I want to bring into the room and his light, his energy, and what he meant to me and how he inspired me to make the change and to fall in love with the community, to fall in love with myself, but most of all, to fall in love with my people. I want to bring into the room Richie Perez. And my other mentor, Richie's right-hand man, known to the city sometimes as that radical who's just too loud, but is very effective, who's now finds himself in Puerto Rico, stuck in that devastation that we call Hurricane Maria. Vicente Panama Alba, who many will know is one of the greatest activists in the city around the issue of racism and police violence. So I say thank you again because those people were the ones that were responsible. The people here today are the ones responsible for really pushing who I am and my sense of community and my sense of love for what I do, because to be on those margins alone is very lonely, and to be on those margins alone drive you mad. And I understand every young man that I've ever tried to touch and feel and understand and say to him, we can get through this because I was you. And those people filtered that for me and allowed me the opportunity to share it in the only ways I know how, by being me. And lastly, I want to thank four of the most important people in my life. The reason why activism is so important to me, because as someone who sat on those margins, someone who was impacted by those margins, I get up every morning and I pray that my 4 children never have to experience any of that. So the work that I do is driven for those 4 young people in my life, and also even more so now for my 2 grandchildren. But I don't want to leave the stage because there's a person that I left out. Many of you always ask me, like, Juan, how many other things are you going to take up? Like, how many fights are you going to fight on a daily basis? The reality is that I have that much time to do it because I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but one of the greatest things I've ever done was choosing a partner and a mother for my children that stands in my corner no matter what. Good or bad. And even when I don't deserve it, to be honest, she stands by me. And I rarely get an opportunity to be with her in public and thank her for what she does every day to make sure that I'm able to do what I do and that my kids are taken care of. So I want to thank you, Martha, and say that this award is for me and for you. Last, I want to say, I want to thank the community of Williamsburg because I am a son of Bed-Stuy. And more than a decade ago, they've adopted me and allowed me the opportunity to lead some of the best efforts that I could ever been a part of. From fighting in the Broadway Triangle to naming me the chair of the Broadway Triangle Community Coalition, that was something that to me is an honor. And I am so glad to stand with you and fight with you every day and go to jail if we need to together. I'm with that. But our fight isn't over. We need to continue to fight because there are so many families depending on us, depending on what we do, what Brooklyn A does, what Los Sudes does, what Churches United does, what El Puente does, what all these great organizations here in Williamsburg have banded together. St. Nick's, I don't want to forget either, have banded together to come to say no more will the little people stand alone. And to Jerry's point, you know, this country now is in a place where we never imagined. And I can tell you that as a young Puerto Rican man living in New York City who's lived on those margins and see what's happening in this country and seeing what's impacted my people in Puerto Rico, there is a bigger fight that we need to fight. My grandparents always taught me that the only way, and this was also reinforced by my mentor, Richie Perez, the only true way that I can love my people, love being Puerto Rican, is by the humanity that I share with others. And I'm asking everybody to think about that because there's over 2 million Americans sitting in Puerto Rico, still with no electricity and no help. And I ask you all to think about that and think about what's happening in this country. Because if you think the fight should not start local so that we can impact globally, then you don't know what the fight is. So join the cause in any way you can. Get on those front lines and let your voice be heard. Because as Brooklyn A proves every day, you should not walk alone if there's so many out there suffering like you. Thank you.